Hello guys, welcome to Solving Solutions, your number one channel where you get solutions to all your solving problems. It's nice having you in class again today. How have you been? Today we are going to look at one method of data presentation. One of the beauty of GIS is that it's a system that you can use to present your data, right? Could maybe geospatial or maybe any other data you have. So in today's video, we have the country boundary of Nigeria that in a shapefile, right? Good. Then we also have an attribute table that shows some special, let's say, hypothetical, right? Good, because they are not real. We populated them with some fields. We have public hospitals, public schools, and then maybe roads, right? Good. Now we want to show a pie chart. Yours can be a real life data that you want to present. We want to show a pie chart, or we want to get a pie chart, or we want to use a pie chart to present this data, right? Good. We want to use a pie chart to present this data. So for each of the states, we are going to see proportionately how the hospitals, the schools, and then the roads appear, right? Good. Now the first thing for us to do is to come down to that particular layer, then go to properties. Good. So under properties, let's come down to diagrams. So now under diagrams, we are actually seeing no diagrams, right? Good. So when you click on the options, we are going to see pie chart, text diagram, histogram, and stack bar, right? Good. However, we are interested in pie chart. So it's actually a type of graph used to represent data as a circle divided into slices, right? Good. Which each slice represents a proportion or percentage of the whole. So we are going to, as we told you, present these public infrastructure. So let's select the multiple. So we have the hospitals, schools, maybe yours can be maybe rocks, right? Good, maybe different strata of rocks, or maybe whatever the case is. Maybe yours can be demographic data, whatever the case is. So we've selected these three data. Let's just add them to what the assigned attribute fields. These are the available attributes, and these are the assigned attributes. Now we can do a few. Let's change the color, because on the slides we are going to have different colors representing those different public infrastructures, right? Good. So we would like to use red, and then let's say we would like to use green, and then finally we would like to use blue. That's about RGB, right? Good. So that's about RGB. So we have red, green, blue. So let's now apply that to see how that appears on our presentation. Good. So this is actually how it appears. Now, if you look closely, you're going to find out that, okay, FCT is not populated, right? Good. That's on the attribute table. FCT is not populated. So if you look closely, you're going to see that the pie chart is a bit loud, like it's almost overlapping at some point. So how do we make it blend into, because it's actually covering or maybe taking attention, or maybe it's just too loud. So how do we try to blend it into the map so that we don't have it only being displayed, or we don't see only it, right? So let's come down to render. Now under render, we can change the opacity to, let's say, 50. We can change the opacity to 50. Better come back here. So we have 50, right? Good. Now let's apply that and see. It should be a little bit transparent. Good. Then the next thing is for us to look at the size. Now if you look at the size, it's actually a fixed size. We can decide to reduce this to, let's say, 10, and then upon doing that, when we apply, we would see that definitely the sizes what will reduce. However, how do we now get the sizes to reduce proportionately? Because each of these, how would I call it? Each of these states have different sizes, right? Good. So let's say there are some smaller states, there are some bigger states, and they are all having the same size, which means the pie chart that is now representing the information we want to, that's presenting the information we want to show to you, does not actually have that proportion. So how do we affect that proportion? In that each of the pie charts in each of the states will now be working based on the size of the state, right? Now, under size, let's look at scale size. Now, under the scale size, we are looking at what? Then let's come down to the attribute. Now, on our attribute table, we have a field for the area, right? Good. We have a field for the area. Now, yours might not have it, and it might also have it. But if it doesn't have it, you can just stick to the fixed size. However, since our attribute table has a field for the shape area, it means per the size of the area, we can also change the size of what the pie chart as it is being displayed on the space, right? Good. So let's now find what our maximum value is. Automatically it sorts out the maximum value, right? Good. So when you've done that, we are using the area. When you've done that, you will now see that, and you apply, you will now see that each of the pie charts will now appear in proportion to what the size of what the, let's say, the area of, or let's say the size of what the state. Now these 5 units is a bit too small. Let's say we are using something like 20, right? Good. Let's apply that, and we believe that it will get a bit bigger. Okay, it's still a bit small, so let's make it 50 at once. Now the idea behind it is that you want something that would be so presentable, but it does not just take your attention away from whatever you're doing. You can see there's a particular state here, right? Good. Now, due to the scale, or let's say the size of the state, you can now see what the size of the pie chart that is now representing what the information we have for that scale. However, we can still see that as we zoom in and we zoom out, the sizes of our, or yeah, the size of the different pie charts are also what changing, and the changes are what are in proportion to, or let's say in proportion with what the size, or let's say the area of what the state, right? Good. Let's try to access our stuff again. Good, we are back there. So the placement, that means how do you want your pie chart to be placed? It's always good, or let's say I prefer it to be placed over the centroid. You can place it using perimeter inside the polygon around the centroid, or maybe over the centroid, right? So you can just play around these other 4 options, apply them, and see how they appear. Now the legend is very important. Now what do they mean by legend? Let's come down to the attributes. Now before we get to the attributes, let's try to close this and then come up here. Good. You can see public infrastructure underscore hospitals. Now these were the fields that were extracted from what? From our attribute table, right? Good. However, if you don't want to present them like this on your, maybe on your map, or maybe wherever you want to put your legend, you can actually change them. Maybe you can remove everything public infrastructure, and you can just have what hospitals, schools, and roads. So how do you do that? Let's come back to our properties. Then good. Under the what? Under the legend, we can just double click and then erase every other thing we don't need. Double click, just, if you want to add something else, you can add. If you want to remove from what you have, you can remove. In our case, we are trying to what? We are trying to remove from what we have, right? Good. So let's do this again. Good. So we now have something like, instead of the public infrastructure underscore schools underscore roads and the rest of that, we now have just hospitals, schools, and roads as what, as our legend. So we can just decide to apply that. Then we can still size, because I see that the 50 does not give me what I want, but depending on what you want, you can see what use that. So you see now to add from your available attributes the assigned attributes you want to use what for your pie chart. We are just using 3 here. Yours might be more, but one disadvantage is that when it gets more, it gets a bit clumsy, and then the presentation would not be as aesthetically pleasing as you would want. Good. Let's say apply, and then okay. Now you can see that our legend has been updated. So instead of the infrastructure, public infrastructure underscore hospitals, public infrastructure underscore schools and that of roads, we now have what? The hospitals, schools, and roads, right? Good. So let's zoom this to layer. Good. So we can now see how the different public infrastructures are in in the different states, right? Good. So by looking at this, I think generally we can deduce that there are more roads in all of the states, right? Good. Let's see our attributable to see if we can confirm that deduction. I think there are more roads. Good. There are more roads because you can see that the color of the roads are bigger in all of the states, right? Good. So it can be seen that from our attributable that the road fields are even the most populated because definitely you need roads to get to all of these other public infrastructures, right? Good. So we believe that we have been able to provide solution to this particular surveying and GIS related problems. So if you have any question, if you want us to help you with something like this, you can always reach out to us via our email or on any of our social media handles, and we are going to get back to you as soon as possible. So until we see you on our next video, ensure you keep staying safe and have a very good time. Bye.